experienced.
Experienced. Having knowledge or skill in a particular job or activity. For example, an experienced player/teacher.
Experiment.
Experiment. To do a scientific experiment or experiments. For example, after experimenting at Columbia University.
Expertise. Expert knowledge or skill in a particular subject, activity or job. For example, professional scientific technical.
Extract.
Extract. To remove or obtain a substance from something, for example by using an industrial or a chemical process. For example, a machine that extracts excess moisture from the air. Extremely. To a very high degree. For example, it is extremely important to follow the directions exactly.
Faculty.
Faculty. A department or group of related departments in a college or university. For example, the Faculty of Law. Gas. Any substance like air that is neither a solid nor a liquid, for example hydrogen or oxygen. For example, air is a mixture of gases. Genetic. Connected with genes, equals the units in the cells of a living thing that control its physical characteristics, or genetics, equals the study of genes. For example, genetic and environmental factors.
Grade. A mark given in an exam or for a piece of schoolwork. For example, British English. Grade. A mark given in an exam or for a piece of schoolwork. For example, British English.
Graduate.
Graduate. A person who has a university degree. For example, job prospects for graduates.
Graduate.
Graduate. A person who has a university degree. For example, job prospects for graduates.
Gym. A room or hall with equipment for doing physical exercise, for example in a school. For example, the school has recently built a new gym.
Homework. Work that is given by teachers for students to do at home. For example, I always do my homework on the bus. ID. An official way of showing who you are, for example a document with your name, date of birth and often a photograph on it, the abbreviation for identity or identification. For example, you must carry ID at all times.
Ignorance. A lack of knowledge or information about something. For example, they fought a long battle against prejudice and ignorance.
Input.
Input. Time, knowledge, ideas, etc. that you put into work, a project, etc. in order to make it succeed, the act of putting something in. For example, I'd appreciate your input on this.
Instance.
Instance. A particular example or case of something. For example, instance of somebody is something.
Institute.
Institute. An organization that has a particular purpose, especially one that is connected with education or a particular profession, the building used by this organization. For example, the report was compiled by Germany's 5 leading economic research institutes.
Institution.
Institution. A large important organization that has a particular purpose, for example a university or bank. For example, the deal is backed by one of the country's largest financial institutions.
Institutional. connected with a large important organization, for example a university or bank. For example, institutional investors.
Intensify. To increase in degree or strength, to make something increase in degree or strength. For example, violence intensified during the night.
Interview.
Interview. A formal meeting at which somebody is asked questions to see if they are suitable for a particular job, or for a course of study at a college, university, etc. For example, a job interview.
Interview.
Interview. A formal meeting at which somebody is asked questions to see if they are suitable for a particular job, or for a course of study at a college, university, etc. For example, a job interview.
Investigation.
Investigation. An official examination of the facts about a situation, crime, etc. For example, a criminal/murder/police investigation.
Investigator. A person who examines a situation such as an accident or a crime to find out the truth. For example, air safety investigators.
Joke. Something that you say or do to make people laugh, for example a funny story that you tell. For example, I can't tell jokes.
Knowledge.
Knowledge. The information, understanding and skills that you gain through education or experience. For example, scientific/technical knowledge and skills. Learn. To gain knowledge or skill by studying, from experience, from being taught, etc. For example, learn something.
Least. To the smallest degree. For example, he always turns up just when you least expect him. Least. To the smallest degree. For example, he always turns up just when you least expect him. Least. To the smallest degree. For example, he always turns up just when you least expect him.
Lecture.
Lecture. A talk that is given to a group of people to teach them about a particular subject, often as part of a university or college course. For example, to go to attend a lecture.
Lecture.
Lecture. A talk that is given to a group of people to teach them about a particular subject, often as part of a university or college course. For example, to go to attend a lecture.
Leisure. Time when you are not working or studying, free time. For example, these days we have more money and more leisure to enjoy it. Less. Used with uncountable nouns to mean a smaller amount of. For example, less something.
Liquid. A substance that flows freely and is not a solid or a gas, for example water or oil. For example, she poured the dark brown liquid down the sink.
Little.
Little. Used with uncountable nouns to mean a small amount, some. For example, a little milk/sugar/tea. Lobby. To try to influence a politician or the government and, for example, persuade them to support or oppose a change in the law. For example, farmers will lobby Congress for higher subsidies.
Mark. To write or draw a symbol, line, etc. on something in order to give information about it. For example, mark something.
Maths. Mathematics, especially as a subject in school. For example, the core subjects are English.
Mobility.
Mobility. the ability to move easily from one place, social class, or job to another. For example, social/geographical/career mobility.
Notably. Used for giving a good or the most important example of something. For example, the house had many drawbacks.
Odds. The degree to which something is likely to happen. For example, the odds are very much in our favor, equals we are likely to succeed.
Opt. To choose to take or not to take a particular course of action. For example, opt for/against something.
Pad. A thick piece of soft material that is used, for example, for cleaning or protecting something or for holding liquid. For example, medicated cleansing pads for sensitive skin.
Pass. To achieve the required standard in an exam, a test, etc. For example, I'm not really expecting to pass first time.
Philosophy. The study of the nature and meaning of the universe and of human life. For example, philosophy of something.
Pioneer. A person who was the first to study and develop a particular area of knowledge, culture, etc. that other people then continue to develop. For example, a pioneer in the field of microsurgery.
Precedent. An official action or decision that has happened in the past and that is seen as an example or a rule to be followed in a similar situation later. For example, the ruling set a precedent for future libel cases.
President. The leader of a republic, for example the US. For example, several presidents attended the funeral.
Primary. Connected with the education of children between the ages of about 5 and 11. For example, primary teachers.
Principal. The person who is in charge of a college or, in Scotland and Canada, a university. For example, Peter Brown.
Professor.
Professor. A university teacher of the highest rank. For example, Professor N. Williams.
Project.
Project. To estimate what the size, cost, or amount of something will be in the future based on what is happening now. For example, be projected.
Psychology.
Psychology. The scientific study of the mind and how it influences behavior. For example, clinical/educational/child/sports psychology.
Pupil. A person who is being taught, especially a child in a school. For example, school pupils.
Qualification. An exam that you have passed or a course of study that you have successfully completed. For example, academic, a educational, a professional, a vocational qualifications.
Qualify. To reach the standard of ability or knowledge needed to do a particular job, for example by completing a course of study or passing exams. For example, how long does it take to qualify?
Quit. To leave your job, school, etc. For example, if I don't get more money, I'll quit.